Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are talking about Space Base, which is designed by John D. Clair. And this copy was provided by the publisher, but the thoughts are all our own. And usually we do tend to review brand spanking new games, but you know what? We thought, let's go back, let's look at a modern classic, what a lot of people consider to be a modern classic, but that we had never played before. Now we've played it a bunch of times, so we wanted to talk about it.
And Space Base is a 2 to 5 player game in which you are building out a space base and you roll the dice, and it's a mechanism where everyone gets stuff. But let's look a bit closer at how that works.
All players begin the game with the same 12 default ships, along with one random ship drawn from the top of the deck. On your turn, you roll both dice, and then you have a choice to either split the dice to activate 2 different ships, or add the dice together to activate one higher numbered ship. At the end of your turn, you may buy any one ship from the market. Then, regardless of what you paid for that card, you move your credits down to match your income marker. If you buy a ship, you place it on the number shown and move the ship that was there under the board, turning it to show its red power. The blue powers are what you gain on your turn, and the red powers are what you gain when anyone else rolls the dice. There are a few kind of benefits you can get in the game. The first is credits, which you use to buy more ships. The second is income, which is the baseline for your credits. And the third is points, which are probably the most important. There are a few other kinds of cards, such as the colony cards, which give big points when you buy them, but then lock up a slot on your board as they can only score once, as well as special cards that allow you to combo or require you to load up charge cubes for larger future benefits. The game is over as soon as someone reaches 40 points, and then the greatest space Commodore is named.
So that's how it plays, but let's talk about how it looks. I think it has a really good production. I'm a huge fan of the really narrow cards.
Oh yeah, this is such a smart solution to what do we do when our game needs 12 cards straight across. Like, I kind of wish Wayfarers of the South Tigris did this. I would like that game a lot more if it had this and was more compact. It's just, I don't know why more games don't do this. It's great.
And everything's really clear. I think the icons are really straightforward, and anything that's a bit special is written out, so you can definitely read it from the card. You don't have to look anything up.
Yeah, and those special cards are, like, we've got kind of a demo of what this would look like mid-game. And there's one with words. And that is generally, if you've got 3, that's as many as you've ever had in a game. And I love the dice. I like the general art. I will say the theme could be anything. There's no reason that this is space-based. This could be just Spinning Jenny Factory, which actually I would love that.
Yeah, it really is just, there are 3 tracks. So there's the money track, then there's a bit of like an income track, and then there's a points track. And the thing that makes it spacey is the points are represented by rockets, really, and the art. But it could be anything. But Space is a great name, I think. And I do love the different art of the various rockets as well.
I will say, though, about those tracks, that's kind of my main tricky with this game, is that these are pretty small cubes, and it's pretty important that they stay where they are, and it's very easy to knock these, especially if you're clumsy like me. And then you got to remember where they were, because there's no way to backtrack, because you're getting things randomly on your turn. So it's kind of a best estimation, which isn't great. So I do kind of wish this was double layered. I also am happy it's not, because this would be a more expensive game. And I like that it is a fairly inexpensive game for who the audience is. So I'm kind of torn on that. But it's definitely something worth noting.
And this is a real nitpick, but when we first played this, we hadn't looked at the dice, and we thought the rocket symbol was a 6.
Right.
And it was only once we rolled a 6 we realized it wasn't. Again, we learned that incredibly quickly.
You'll learn that immediately. Yeah, and there is one rocket, but we just thought, rocket, that seems good. But obviously, the second you look at the other side of the dice, these dice, though, they got this cool galaxy thing going on, too, where they're kind of speckled, but like in the middle, and they're a tiny bit opaque, but not see-through. I really like these dice too. But let's talk about the player count, because this does play, I won't say like enormously different, but it has quite a different feel at different counts. And the main reason is these here. So these cards you tuck under the top because they give you things on other people's turns. Obviously, if you're playing with 2 players, that means there's only, like, it's your turn 50% of the time. If you're playing with 4 players, it's only going to be your turn 25% of the time. See that math? I'm killing it. Which means 75% of the time you're relying on these. So building this engine becomes so much more important when you've got a bunch of other players around the table.
Absolutely, because at 2 players, I found that once I had some strong point cards for what benefit I would get on my turn, I was really hesitant to move those up because, like you say, 50% of the time it's my turn. So that's a pretty good chance. I'd kind of want to leave those out, even if it means I'm getting less of a benefit on your turn. But at more players, just like you said, you're going to want more of those so that by the time it's your turn, you've really racked up the benefits.
The other thing, too, is that these guys here, which are one-time shots that get you big points, because you only need 40 points to win the game. So 10 points, you're a quarter of the way there, which is huge. But they fill a spot, so now anytime you roll 8s, that's going to get you nothing. In a 2-player game, that's quite a cost because you're losing a lot of that. Anytime you roll an 8, 8's a pretty common number. But in a 4-player game, it's really a race to these bad boys because you're not as bothered. You want these cards up here anyway. It does, however, shut down being able to move cards up here.
Yeah.
So it shuts you down in a couple of ways, but still it's more worth the cost, and you've got more time, hopefully, to build up that engine, 2 in a 4-player game. But I really like this at 2 as well. Like, I think it's really nice both ways.
Yeah, I would agree it is really nice both ways. And part of that, I think, is how replayable it is. Because there are lots of different cards that can come out. So there's for the regular cards, there are 3 different stacks that kind of go incrementally a higher point cost. And then there's obviously the big point cards. But each of those cards do something a little bit different. So they work for different numbers, or they'll give you different point values, or they'll give you a special ability. And so every game I've played, I feel like I haven't used the same strategy because it's what cards are available. So sometimes I'll really maximize my lower value ones to have high points or the high income on other people's turns because lower dice are going to be more likely to be rolled. But the next game might look completely different.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that sets this apart from the obvious comparison, which is Machikoro. And anyone who plays this is going to think Machikoro because that's the other big popular roll dice everyone gets stuff game. But in Machikoro, it does feel like the cards just feel a little bit more static game to game. And you're generally going to get 1, maybe 2 things for each number. And here, just that being able to load something up, like last game we played, anytime Jess rolled a 9, I got 17 coins and 2 points or something crazy. And I had a thing where you're 8 points at your 9, so if she rolled an 8 or 9, I was getting so much, and she very kindly obliged me by rolling a lot of those.
The odds of me rolling as many 9s as I rolled that game were so low, and yet every turn I was rolling 9s. It was so frustrating.
The odds obviously were 100% because it happened. But it's great that you can do that. That you can do a crazy strategy like that and just load something up so much is really fun. And you can do that a bit in Machikoro. But I think when we got this, we hadn't played this before because we really used to love Machikoro. And then we played it a lot. We just kind of grew out of it as people do. And then so playing this, we thought, oh, it's just going to be Machikoro. It's not, though. It feels very different. Both are good, but this feels very different, and to us felt very fresh, which was cool.
Yeah, so I think that leads nicely into thinking about who this game might be for. And I do think it would be a similar audience for Machikoro. I don't think it's a huge step up from Machikoro. I think it just feels a little bit different. And so that it would be a gateway game. People who are relatively new to games, I think, could pick this up easily. And the nice thing is everybody is involved on everybody's turns. So that works really well, too, for a gaming group because you're always invested. And if you like Machikoro, I think this also is a good fit because I do think it is different enough.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be for like grizzled vet gamers who want that like heavy, deep experience. That isn't what this brings to the table. But what this does, and I think is maybe even harder to do like when designing games, is this is kind of one of those like modern classics that feels like it's going to be around for a while and feels like it just grabs onto a lot of different new gamers. Like you could bring this to a family gaming night. You can kind of win people over with this a little bit. It fills a bit of that same space as like Azul or Quacks of Quedlinburg or Baron Park, those kind of modern classic gateway games. I think this fits in that space.
Yeah, and I think similar to Quacks, it has a lot of luck element, which is great for some newer gamers, but also enough strategy that if you win, you still feel like, oh yeah, it was because of my strategy.
Yeah.
And if you lose, you're kind of like, oh, it was because of my poor luck, which is nice if you're new to games.
If you really don't like luck, though, and you really don't like dice rolling, this isn't going to be a fit, because that is what this is. This is kind of a gambling game, and you can hedge your bets because you know sevens are more likely. You can just put everything on 1 to 6 because you know that's getting rolled every time. But there is certainly a lot of luck, and if you're someone who you just feel like you're cursed by the dice gods, then perhaps this isn't going to win you over. But that's our thoughts on this game. We were pleasantly surprised by it. We thought it's just a cute little gateway game, and I think well worth a peek.
Yeah, and I know there are a lot of expansions, but because this is brand new to us, we don't feel the need yet to dip into any of those. And like you said, we were pleasantly surprised, and that is Space. So thank you so much for watching, and as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.